discussion. So if y'all want to move up in a little closer, that would be nice, probably.
Okay. Pretty casual, you guys. Really, if we can do some question answer to see what's on your minds. But this, they asked me to focus on the dual purpose and focus on the milking because this is very much a beef. Nebraska's a beef state, and we're kind of leaning towards beef, and there's a lot of beef education. But we can't lose sight of the dual purpose of the Dexter. And many breeds were dual purpose or tri-purpose. They all started that way. Lean one way or lean the other. And the example you may really be familiar with are the beef shorthorns and the milking shorthorns. They split. Fortunately for the Dexter, because they're still a family milk cow and they haven't gone commercial, we still have that dual purpose. And we have a lot of dual purpose traits. When we show under beef judges. And so a lot of us may not do as well as we think our cows should have done, but you're under a beef judge, and those beef judges they're looking to put meat on the table, which a Dexter can do. But they really need to be half and half with that dual purpose. And dairy traits, if you look at a beef cow and you look at the top line and you look at those nice thick shoulders, dairy cows don't have nice thick shoulders. Think of a Holstein or think of a Jersey. They're kind of pinched on the top. This attributes to our easy calving, if you guys think about that. Those beef guys have those big burly heads and they've got those massive shoulders, and that's where you run into calving problems. We have calving ease because we have that conformation of a dual purpose animal with those slighter shoulders. We don't want to get away from the dual purpose. But we do want to look at we can learn a lot from the beef side of it. Another thing we can learn from the beef side is a nice wide stance. We don't want them walking a tightrope. We still want thickness in the breast. We want thickness in the back end. The thickness in the chest and the brisket is for the heart and the lungs and the cow to be working. The wideness in the back is really handy. If you get under there and actually hand milk, you will appreciate a nice wide stance in the back because you can get your hands in there. You're going to appreciate evenly spaced teats, and you appreciate a nice tight udder. And that's really where we have to shoot for. Udders are extremely hard to breed for. One of the toughest traits. When you've got a poor udder on a first-time cow, that udder will get worse and worse and worse to the point where she's either injuring herself or the calf can't nurse. It's easiest to cull them right away, and she may be gorgeous, but you're talking several generations before you can fix that udder. Might be worth it, might not. Disposition, obviously. You don't want a crazy cow. Yeah, go ahead.
On the udder, what about the vestigial teats?
The extra teats, they don't hurt anything. They don't hurt anything. All mammals have extra teats. Humans, dogs, cats, and they're all in that milk line. They're not going to hurt anything. There are some judges that will count you down for having them because they're not real pretty. They can be removed when they're little. They are hereditary. Some lines have already bred them out. But they don't mean anything. They don't mean it's a milkier cow. They don't mean you're going to have a litter instead of one calf. And they don't hurt anything. But you can absolutely snip those off. You can, yeah. When they're little, babies, take off the horns, take off the teats.
Wow.
But make sure you take off the right ones and let the vet do it. Because you can really screw yourself up.
Yeah, I know the difference. Awesome. Okay.
Sure. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Terry had brought up a good one. But he's not even here, so he already bitched me. What do you guys want to know? What's a good udder? We want the udder to go full front up towards the belly button, head of the cow. We want it to go up to the belly button as far as we can. And we want it to go back between the legs up to the vulva as far as it can. With a very strong medial ligament that runs down the center of that udder from the belly button to the vulva to help hold that. It's nice to see it, yeah. If it's not a real strong medial, the teats will splay out to the side because that thing stretches.
I said it's the equivalent of them falling in your armpit.
It's true. And then the higher it is attached to the vulva, the less it's going to be falling down with poor rear attachment. You'd like to have a quite level floor, so it shouldn't be pendulous. You really don't want it to shoot up towards their belly. You want it more flat. Retract a lot after calving? When they dry up? It's only going to dry up so far, and the older they get, a heifer's going to pull that back in faster than an 18-year-old. You know how that is. If the training bra has done the right job. Oh, Jeff's out of here. Long teeth. Okay, we do a lot of hand milking. So the true dairy cow now has a short little teat that they hook all the machines to. That teat length is going to kind of be up to you and your milking. It can get too long, and it can create a problem if she has a very large bag. If those teats are too long, they could get stepped on by the calf. She could step on them, not standing up. Hopefully not that long. When she's laying down. There's a song to that. Da, 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 da. You know that one. So they can be too long, but we do a lot of hand milking. There are not a lot of homesteaders that have a machine to milk with. And there are quite a few men that do it, and they have a heck of a time with those teeny teats and their man hands. They really do. So it's your comfort. Depending on how much milk you get out of that, can be the size of the teat and the orifice, and how full those cisterns fill when you're milking, and how rapid you get it out. It has a lot to do with it. If you have a...
So do you recommend milking all of your cows to get an idea, or at least being able to feel the udder to get an idea of what it looks like?
You learn so much milking your cows. And I have done all of mine. Everything in my herd except for the males are trained to milk.
My bull would love it.
He would love it.
Not so much.
But you learn so much. That's where I learned the most about my conformation.
Hands-on.
And you really get to know your cow. And you really know what you're looking for in that calf. Some really dig it, and some really don't. Talking about the cow. Some will run right in there and they love it, and then others just want to get the job done. But I wouldn't hold that against anybody. I personally am not that dedicated of a milker, so I do once a day. And that's even with a calf off after I've weaned. I do once a day. And they've learned that. And even with my once a day, I can get up to 2.5 gallons in one milking. And that's just too much for our family, honestly. So when, you guys know, when you try to sell these cows and people call you and they go, well, I'm looking for 5 gallons of milk a day. Really? Really? What are you going to do with that? On Christmas morning. They do adjust their amount. They really do. Yeah. Yeah. At about 2 gallons, I quit and go, no, go dry up. too much. Yes, ma'am.
Do you pasteurize the Dexter milk?
I don't. I drink it raw. Do you pasteurize? You pasteurize Dexter milk. I have a good joke on that one, but I won't do it on the mic.
Well, I want to hear that.
You certainly can. You certainly can. I don't. I use mine raw. Yes, ma'am.
A lot of that dependent on how clean you are about cleaning the cow yourself and all your equipment.
Right. You keep your equipment clean. Keep her from stepping in the bucket. Yeah.
Now you touched briefly on the teats and how they splay out, and so few people talk about this, but it's something I've learned in the last year that which direction those teats are pointing
Goes in the bucket?
is a really good indication of where the udder attachments are failing. Can you talk about that a little bit more besides
Kimberly's
when they
exactly,
tilt forward,
Kimberly's
when they
exactly
tilt back?
right. And that's just it. That's all your structure and your strength in that udder, like the medial ligament there. And if the teats splay out to the side, as she ages, that will get weaker and weaker, and they will splay further and further. And Kim's right. When you're milking her, it is hard to get it in there. You got the bucket on the side of the cow because you're out this way. It may or may not affect her and the calf. When you have a poor rear attachment, that rear attachment gets worse and worse, and that udder ends up hanging down, and all the teats are pointed at knees.
Oh, and they look horrible.
And that's pretty hard to milk into a bucket too. And it's really hard on the cow when she trots across the field. Smacks that sucker.
I can tell you that.
These really, it may be your favorite cow, but they really are something that could be cold. It's not good to have them in our sire book, our herd book, if we want to improve the breed.
So basically, if your cow needs a bra, you should probably call it.
Yes, sir.
Is there not?
I would get closer, but I'm tied up.
Is there not standards, like breed standards that define what's acceptable and not acceptable?
I think that is Mr. Chambers' category. And are you gonna go over udder, Jeff? Good.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about the length, and the different hand sizes, man hand versus,
Yeah.
you'd almost think there would be a standard that. And hopefully at some point we'll have a classification system where everyone will know where everything's at.
See, and I think it's important to explain to people the difference between standards and guidelines because they confuse the two, especially with regards to the ADCA and confirmation. Does the ADCA have breed standards or guidelines?
Right.
Right, we have guidelines, which are very different from standards.
Can't be registered unless it meets this criteria.
Exactly.
We have guidelines. So, breed standards are more common to my knowledge for things like dogs,
Chickens.
chickens.
Huge.
They have very specific.
And that's a great example because the chickens have a standard because the chickens don't have a registry. If it meets that standard, that's the breed that it is. Did you have a question? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I will do that.
But in your mind, define what you see as a dual purpose animal. Because it's not all about milking and dual purpose, just as it's not all about meat. It's a fine line. Where do you see that?
You can be excused. Okay, so if I'm going to go look to purchase a cow, number one thing I'm going to look at are the hind legs. because I don't want them close together and I don't want them hocking in. That's the first thing I'm going to look at. I don't want a tightrope walker. I'm going to look for a very powerful loin. So, okay, the rear legs, that could go dairy or beef, because you want that in both. I want a really powerful top line, strong loin. That's a beef trait. I want a huge white brisket, as white as I can get. That is going to be both your beef and your dairy because of the heart and lungs.
The dewlap thing too?
No, that's the brisket. The dewlap is the,
Oh, no. I'm thinking the brisket.
that's the brisket, yep. Nice and wide there.
I'm seeing a lot of, they don't, the ones that I like are the ones that are kind of almost square looking.
Yeah, that's beef. That is beef, beef, beef.
And I'm seeing a lot of,
Fat, fat, fat.
of square here and then slanted here.
What's here?
Front, back.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, the brisket is not squared off. It's not.
It's square in a beef, not squared in a dairy.
Oh, okay. So somewhere between the two.
Somewhere between, well, no, you're not going to get between the two. You're probably not going to get between the two. You're going to get one or another.
Okay.
That's pretty tough to get between. Next thing I would look at would be depth of body. That's both in beef and dairy. I want lots, no, we go from the withers down. And that is, Jeff will go, I'll go over this tomorrow. 5 seconds, I pass that. But that's all capacity for the guts, for the feed. Nice rib spring in a beef, dairy or slab-sided. So, how do we make this perfect animal in between? The other thing is a dairy cow doesn't have a hip. Dairy cows don't need hips. Dairy cows don't need hips and shoulders. And they don't have to lay down meat. They certainly don't lay down fat. It's made to go into the udder. Period. Dairy cows will breed back completely under condition. They will reproduce. Where a beef cow will not reproduce until it has enough fat cells and is happy with itself. They won't. Unfortunately, with our Dexters, they did get that dairy trait. And there's so many people out there, and I know you've all seen these cows that you go rescue because they're so skinny, because the people, well, they just breed back. It's an unfortunate trait that they breed back. It used to be years ago, there was a dairy type Dexter and a beef type Dexter, and that is so not true. Originally your beef type were your chondro carriers because they're short and thick and they look beefy. Anything taller than that was on the same feed in the same field, which this gentleman talked about with genetics, is skinny. Therefore, you've got your dairy type and your beef type. No, you don't. You have a chondro carrier and a non-chondro carrier, and they're all starving. Chondro holds it together better because they got that squished bone structure. So it's all dual. They're all dual, every one of them. And I've got pictures in a book of a cow that I picked up that was in poor condition, and people would say that's a dairy type. But then I've got pictures of her 16 months later that people would swear she was the beef type. It's the same animal. That's what we're breeding. We're breeding that dual purpose. And you are not going to get that perfect dual purpose with the beef butt and the beef loin, the dairy udder, the depth. You're going to be picking a long time for, oh, Jeff's got it, okay. Oh.
That's what I wanted you to get to. But shouldn't we try to do that?
We should absolutely 100% try to do that. There's so much stuff, and that's another thing that makes the length of teat question. If that's all we had to worry about in our Dexter udders, we'd be rocking it. But there's a lot more than that to worry about. You just look at udders, and an udder should be the same cylindrical shape from top to bottom. Not a V. Because those V's will get bigger and bigger. And I had a half Hereford, half Dexter. Cool. That was a dual purpose. She was cool, really cool. She had all those Hereford traits and the Dexter traits, but she came from a horrible Hereford group, and her teats got so fat that by calf number 7, I had to kill her. I couldn't fit 2 hands around a teat.
Oh my God.
And if you can't feed a calf, what are you good for? What am I breeding you for? And why are you passing that on? And that broke my heart. Some of these are hard. Some of them are a hard choice. But if you want to better the breed, these are the choices that you have to make. So they don't need to milk 7 gallons like a Jersey, and they don't need to lay down fat like an Angus. But the fact is, they do a nice rich milk. They do a good quantity for a family, or maybe too much for even a family to use. Feed the pigs. And they do marble. And they will lay down fat. If you feed the little suckers, really feed them, they will lay down fat, and they do marble. Dairy cows don't marble. And I milked my Hereford, and her protein was 1.3%, where my Dexters are over 5. I had Tessa in Nampa, Idaho, a long time ago. I would do my whole herd. And that was really fun to go from mother to daughter, and to go from breed to breed, and then crossbreed and find out. Her daughter, the one that I had to butcher, was 4 point something in her butter fat. And her mom was only like 1.5. So that's what the Dexter did to my part blood. That's why I've learned the most and really like to play with the different breeds. Because I learned so much about our cows by looking at the structure of others. If you look at a dairy bull, pictures of dairy bulls, they look a lot like our old Dexter bulls that were for stud. They've got the bigger front ends, they've got the pinched shoulders, they've got no hip. They got this, looks like the safari African butt. They look a lot like a dairy bull. Buffalo? Yeah. Yeah. So, what does anybody need to know? Terry, you had a good one in your back. Tell them what your vet said.
My vet said, because I have some cows that got the long in the toe, have twin, so I've been trying to breed that out. My vet said that goes back to the dairy. Chances are you go and test and that kind of thing. Probably is pretty cool.
But what Terry and I talked about, so I don't know if you all heard that, but Terry was talking to his vet with his long-toed Dexters, and the vet said that's a dairy trait, those long toes. And they are. Dairy cows have crabby feet. Beef cows have gorgeous feet. But what Terry and I were talking about, if you start breeding out, so you're focusing on that hoof, right? Not necessarily the rest of the cow. You're focusing on that hoof, that long hoof, to try to fix that with your beef foot. What else are you taking away? What else are you taking away? What else are you breeding out that you're not seeing? But here's the thing, right? Yeah, I know, here's the thing, you don't find out for 3 years. A cow has her best lactation on lactation number 3. That's where the chips fall. And these guys that call me and say, oh my God, I got this bull, and every heifer that came into lactation from my broken down mother cows have the tightest udders I've ever seen. And I go, really? First calf heifers? Yep. It's so cool. Wait till they have their third and they look just like their mothers. You're talking a teenage girl in junior high versus the geriatrics ward at Shag. It means nothing. It's not till the third lactation that you really judge those udders. That's where you look at your suspension. That's where you look at where that. I have 17 to 20-year-old cows that have udders above their hocks. My 20-year-old was on calf 18, and it was above her hocks. And all teats were still cylindrical. Awesome.
And explain why it's important that that the teats do not go below the hock.
When they go below the hock, they get popped and banged and bruised and mastitis and yeah.
They can deglove by stepping on them. It is a very big deal.
It is a big deal. I know a gal that had a chondro cow that had a massive udder, like a 5-gallon-a-day milker, and someone stepped on the side of her udder, and the calf was actually nursing out of the hole on the side of the udder. Sometimes it's called animal husbandry. And you got to do the good with the bad, and you got to do the right thing. What would happen to that cow out in the woods? She wouldn't be reproducing, for sure.
Other thing, think of that calf that's going to try to latch on there. Them bags and teats are right down at the ground. You can't get calf on there.
You're right. Yeah, they are down at the ground. Yeah.
I had that happen this year. I had to lock the cow up and pick it up and put it in the calf's mouth because he just wouldn't get his head down.
So, what would happen in the wild? Calf wouldn't eat. Cow wouldn't reproduce. It would end it. And that's what we need to be responsible for with our breeding and what we look for and what we pass on. And we can't take a cruddy udder and sell it to someone that doesn't know it's a cruddy udder. And people do not know what udders are out there. Sometimes I get on the computer and just go, look how beautiful that is. No, it's not. Look how big it is. No, it's not. No,
Yes, because if you have a large udder, and I put quotes in that, but the attachments are so shallow, then you take that same bag and you stretch it out to where it's supposed to be. It'll look completely different. And then you go, oh, wow, well, I guess they don't produce that much milk. You know?
Right, and some of those big pendulous ones do not
Right.
produce more than the tight one, just because it's up there.
Yeah.
You can't hear. Sorry. Come on up. Here, look. Here's it. Come on up. Big pendulous udders. If you stretched them out and fit them to where they're supposed to be, they're not making any more milk. It's not because they don't make a bunch of milk just because you see that great big udder. This is not, okay, you could argue that. Look at the Holsteins, look at the Jerseys. We see that great big udder, but that great big udder has all the suspension it needs to have. And that great big udder has 8 gallons in it. Ours only looks that big because it's a flopping and a hanging. And we don't need that.
Okay, you didn't hear me? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Because I kind of think of it like a basketball. If you take a basketball and you put it underneath that cow, and if you take it and cut it in half and stretch it out so you've got a real high rear attachment and a real forward attachment, that bag is not going to hang down as far. It's still going to produce the same amount of milk, but it won't look like it produces a ton because it's all stretched out. Now you have a nice, beautiful rear and forward attachment and a nice big bag that hangs down just a little bit, so it doesn't roll below their hock, but like Jeff's Chambers cows are beautiful. They have a really nice, milky udder. But if you took that udder and you shrunk it, the attachments, it would be like dragging on the ground. And so I see this a lot, and people say, well, this cow has got a beautiful udder. Look at all that milk. But what you're looking at, what I see is shallow udder attachments. And so unless you get in there milk, you don't really know if it produces a lot, and probably it's not. It just appears that way. That's why it's so important to have those attachments be farther apart. So I'm taking my getting off the soapbox.
It works that way in women too.
I'm working on something.
It doesn't
weird
matter
on
the
what
size.
you may have already covered this, but what about a cow that we classify as an easy keeper or whatever that would have a body score of an 8 or 8 plus or whatever? Can that extra fat, can that impact the size of the udder?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Or a cow that lost her calf or at some point in time?
That's a great point. And I am up against that right now with a cow that I got back and sold. Do not make your heifers look like beef heifers and feed the holy buggers out of them. They will get fat in their brisket. They will get fat down their back. They will get fat in their butt. They look pretty cool and beefy. However, it's all the inside fat that we don't see. You can double. Whatever fat you can see on the outside, you can double on the inside. And that sits in their udder, and you lose all that capacity. That's all around their organs for breeding them, and they will not breed if they're too heavy. They will not breed if they're too heavy. I'm having an issue with this right now with a gal that got her. I mean, my vet said he can't even evaluate her again until she's lost 150 pounds. Just can't get his arm in there.
How do you?
She's that fat. Oh, yeah.
The chondro carriers, because I have a chondro carrier that gets fat on air,
Chondro carriers get fat on air, yeah.
and she is fat, and
Yeah.
she's always fat.
Yeah,
I don't care if she's feeding a calf or not.
yeah.
So how do I stop her from being fat
Yeah.
and still let her graze?
There you go. Don't let her. That's called an easy keeper.
Don't let her.
She will save you money.
Well, yeah.
You don't have to feed her so much. The other thing you can do with her is leave the calves on her.
Oh, I do.
Leave the calves on her and let them take the weight off of her, and don't supplement her. If you supplement her with a little bit of very high quality feed. Yeah. But she's also chondro carrier. She also has a really huge rib spring. So you might be seeing this huge flat back and this massive square body, but she's got, her rib spring is, yes, but that's not fat. That's, okay, but that's her organs crushed into her skeleton.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
right.
No, not the, my horse does, but my cow doesn't.
We have one cow that has fat rolls on
Yes.
his tail. And my
Yeah.
my vet was the same thing. He was sticking his
Yeah.
arm up there, and he's like, she's so fat. And I said, what do you want me to do? Put a muzzle on her?
This one that I got looks like someone took her tail and shoved it up her back. The bulls love her. But man almighty. It's not good, and it's a fight. It's a fight. And if you're lucky enough, hey, Dexters are supposed to live on air and give us 10 gallons of rich milk a day, right? Isn't that the fallacy that's out there? So if you've got an easy keeper, that's cool. Take advantage of it. Breed that. That's great. But you just have, there we come back to animal husbandry. You have to take care of them.
You got something. Come on. No. Well, yeah, but go ahead.
So, say I'm a Dexter breeder and my primary term of market is beef. What should my focus in breeding selection be in a dual purpose breed?
Okay. So we've got a Dexter breeder, and his market is beef. He wants to focus on beef, but he's got a dual purpose animal. How does he focus on this and make his customers happy? You know what I tell people? Go buy a low line. Angus. Now, that's the truth. I do tell them that. If you just want to do beef, go get a low line. However, If you do want the Dexters, which are way cooler, I did low lines, they suck. Nasty little critters. If you do want to do the Dexters, you still have to focus on the same. You're still going to want a cow that does big production milk. You still want a sound animal. You want an animal with an intact udder. You might get selective to, I don't have to feed this one as much for her to be fatty fat. You might cull that way. But you can still focus on working a bigger hip, working more shoulders, and easy keepers. Dexters are a lot more fun to raise than low line, I will tell you that. I will tell you that. But the people that come to me that go, no, I just, at the fairs, you know, they've never had a cow before. I just want beef. Go get a low line. Shoo-shoo.
Or I hear a lot, well, I'm never going to milk my Dexter.
Never
I don't
gonna
really
milk her.
care about udder structure.
Don't care about udder
I
structure.
just want beef.
I just want beef.
So I feel like that's a disservice to the breed. Even if you're never gonna milk that cow, if you only focus on one trait, we're losing those qualities.
We are losing the qualities. And I know of another gal that has collected Dexters over the years, and she will actually pull their registry from the herd book. Gone. And that is not a disfavor. If they're cruddy. Just cruddy. Just bags swinging and, you know.
What's the value of the high butterfat milk you described coming from our Dexters for a beef operation?
Well, it makes for fat, happy calves. Yeah, the more butter fat you have, and that was kind of a fun thing with my husband and I talking. Okay, so we've got this Hereford, we've got a few beef cows to play with as well. What happens if you have that Dexter fat content and you've got a Hereford calf eating it? Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Jumbo, the big bad cat.
Well, let me tell you how it works.
Efficiency at its finest. Period. That's all it is.
It is. It is. Yeah. So it just. Yeah, the richer, we don't really have an easy way to test our milk, which is unfortunate. I think there's a lot of people that would have a lot of fun doing it. But the fatter and people use it for product, of course, so the more butter fat you have, that home milker that wants to play with making butter and stuff, they're going to have more fun with that. But yes, you're going to definitely have fatter cows. Yeah. Cowboys like fat calves, right, Jeff?
Does anybody have anything else? Are we good? Do we have more wrapping to do?
I did, in the beginning, I tested the core of mine. And then once you know what they are, it's pretty easy to guess. And so it's just not that important to me to test anybody anymore, but some I know just because of parents. I haven't found that the A2 milk that I drink is absolutely no different than the A1 milk that I drink. It's not different. It makes no difference in my protein tests. It makes no difference in my butterfat tests. It makes no difference when we're making product with it. It's easier to sell.
Yes, Terry. Yeah.
The gentleman mentioned the ancillary teats, or the extra teats, maybe have an impact on butterfat.
No. Okay. That's a good one. I know, and I listened to that. And I went, okay, you guys think about this now. You've got extra teats on the top, and that cow has a massive high butter fat. And you breed that cow, and her baby comes out with extra teats on the top, and that baby has mass butter fat. And that baby's baby has teats and has mass butter fat. What is similar here?
The cow produces
The genetics of the cow that makes high butter fats. It's all myth. That is just not, I think you gotta really think things through, because I could be lying to y'all too, so really think it through. And never believe stuff on Facebook. But do, use common sense and to think things through. I listened to that guy and I was just, oh my God. What's in common? Yes. He's got a whole line of rich butterfat cows that are creating extra little teats. It's not the little teats. It's mother to daughter. And he's the professor? Sorry.
Unless there is a genetic factor that connects the two
Yeah.
that we don't know about. And we
Well-
don't know.
There would be a genetic factor that we would know about if she was giving birth to it.
Well, I mean, the high milk fat versus the vestigial
On the same cow.
on the same cow. If there's a connection between the two, like say,
I'm betting there is.
you think there is?
Absolutely. To the teats? No. To the cows? Yes. Whether it's the same father, whether it's the same mother? Yes.
No. I think that's my point. You can have a trait. You know, you
Yeah.
said the hooves.
Right.
You breed out that trait. What else are you breeding out?
Right.
Well, there could be on that same genetic marker
Right.
the extra teeth and the high butterfat. They could.
The high butter fat and the extra teat are not on the same marker.
Okay, there we go. That's what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Might be in that
Lineage.
lineage.
There you go.
That line towards that marker, so
That's
you
right.
can say that that extra teeth indicates probably a high butterfat because it's in that lineage of that cows and cows. But not all cows have that lineage, so you can have high butterfat. Does that make sense to you?
So does everybody know what they're looking for in dual purpose now? Answered every question you could possibly have ever. So don't count down those non-beefy girls, and don't think that they're dairy just because they're underfed. Bad hooves may be good milker. Yeah. But check out her udder before you buy for the hooves.